At an early age, you read the newspaper. How did you I think that's really odd because that's just not a thing that young people do. But you read about President JFK. How did reading about him affect your view of the world?
My grandmother was an avid reader of the newspaper, and keep in mind, I'm in Southwest Arkansas. We're close to Louisiana, and we're getting Louisiana politics. And you had to be just out of your mind not to be interested in those stories. And so, for the one thing, it was just it was compelling. And the rest of my members of my family read the comics, and I just want the news stories. But this was at a time, when John F. Kennedy was running for office. There was lots and lots of coverage, during that time, and I read every bit of it. And the thing that inspired me about it more than anything, for the first time ever, I heard my elders around me talk out loud about politics and talk out loud about voting, because every time I've heard them talking about voting, I would hear the term poll taxes, but I didn't know what it meant. But they started saying it out loud, and I realized that this man was something special to people. And the first time I realized somebody in politics could give somebody hope, because they thought life was going to be much, much better because just one man was being elected. And that's kind of when I got the political bug. I thought, one of these days, I don't care what this is, I'm going to do this.
How old were you?
I was about 9 or 10.
What?
Yeah.
What's a poll tax? What's a poll tax mean? You heard about poll taxes?
Yeah, what I heard about that, I knew when they were whispering about it. I knew the poll tax meant something that was not pleasant, and I knew they had to pay for it. But the poll tax literally meant you had to buy this piece of paper, to present when you went to vote. It was one of the ways of suppressing the vote, because so many people did not have that 50 cents or 15 cents or whatever it took. But you had to go even worse than that. You had to go someplace that was not where you would get questioned about. Why do you need it? Why do you need a piece of paper or a poll?
You had to buy your tax piece of paper? You had to buy a piece of paper to vote?
Yes. And that's why it was called a tax.
I got you.
You had to have that piece of paper to present. Yeah.
Some of your co-workers have said they are surprised you didn't go into to work in the public sector sooner. How did being a teacher prepare you for going into that service, and why did you stay a teacher for 30 years along with all that other you did?
One, because every year, every day, you walk into the classroom and you're going to make a difference, unless you're just a vegetable or something, you are. And it was what I wanted to do from the bottom of my heart, and it just was so rewarding. And I loved being around those students, and it just kept me energized all the time, and the learning was so fantastic. But the one thing that's really true is I always had a very diverse group of students. And when you think about teaching and being prepared to go into the public sector, especially as a legislator, there are so many parallels here. I tell all teachers, if you have really done a good job of teaching, I promise you're prepared for the legislature. Because what you have to do is work with all kind of attitudes, all kind of parents. It's a very diverse place where not everybody's on the same page all the time, literally. And you have to figure out a way to be that person to work with all those kids, no matter what their income was, no matter what their color was, no matter, what their learning styles were. And that is the thing that really has helped me so much in the legislature, because we are the same kind of thing, except I always tell my legislative friends, the kids, caught on a whole lot better until let's get together, work together, the way things are some now. But because I did that, it was being a bipartisan working legislator just came naturally for me. And when I was in the legislature, I worked with Governor Huckabee, I worked with Governor Beebe, and it was not ever an issue of whether or not I was going to work with somebody just because they were Democrat, or I'm not going to work with somebody because they're Republican, because I had taught all those different kind of things.
How do you feel about the current changes to our public and private schools in Arkansas right now? I've seen you on TV, even though you and I are not personal acquaintances. I've seen you on TV forever, and I've seen you at some press conferences, and I heard you say You may punish Little Rock, and I'm quoting, I think, you may punish Little Rock by closing schools and taking over the district, but 5 or 10 years from now, what's going to be different if we are not looking at the source from which all the problems come from? What do you think's wrong right now? What is wrong right now with the Arkansas schools?
Well, what I was referring to then is the State Board of Education had taken over schools because of test scores. And that is, I know a lot of people think that makes sense, but it doesn't, because you don't learn that much in a test score. But as long as we can predict, and these are the things I'm talking about that we don't pay attention to, as long as we can predict that a child is probably going to have a low test score or not do as well as you or I might think they should because of where they live in this city, as long as that is the case, or as long as their income determines what they're going to be making on that test score and the opportunities they have, if we don't address these kind of things, what I was referring to, rather than taking what I think is the lazy way out and just saying it's going to be determined on the test score. Because at the same time, the state board, I guess, thought they were doing well. What they did was destabilize communities by closing schools. I was never able to my satisfaction, at least, get people to understand you're making a judgment based on one simple thing. And on the one hand, you say you kind of know why it's that way because of all the inequities. But we are not addressing the inequities. We're addressing the outcome.
Oh, I agree.
Without thinking about changing the inputs.
Was there something that just happened one day around 2000 and I think it was 2000 when you first ran for office, around the year 2000, where you just thought, okay, it's time for me to run for a public office now? Was there some defining moment?
Well, actually, yeah, because like I said, when I was 9 or 10 years old in the fourth grade, I remember getting to fourth grade during that time. When I knew for sure I wanted to do this, I was actually waiting for my son to finish high school, and my son finished high school in 1998, and it would be 2 years later before there would be I would have an opportunity to run. But as soon as those 2 years were over, this is just the time. It was not a one-off thing. It was something I always knew I was committed to doing. Speaking of patience, yes.
Well, you worked your first 2 terms. You taught while you were also a representative of your first 2 terms, and then
I did because it was the pay was just so low. I had to keep teaching. And when I went to the legislature, I had to take leave without pay, and it was just living paycheck to paycheck. I felt like I was back in my childhood days. It was that hard, and so when the session was over, I had to go back to teaching. But this was the time that we also got into all of the Lakeview discussions. And that started to consume a whole lot of all of our time.
What's the Lakeview? What's the Lakeview discussions?
It was a Lakeview desegregation case that required the courts found the state out of compliance with the Constitution to make sure all kids had an equitable and efficient education.
That's what Judge Bob Brown was talking about on our interview 2 weeks ago that he created legislature about. Yeah. This is your last question. When you're lying in bed dreaming, and I know you do because everybody does, and you see yourself in Washington and you're daydreaming about it, what does that daydream look like?
It looks like a group of people who come from all different corners of this country who can put aside whatever their leanings are, and they are working together to represent everybody in this country. That we are a mosaic of thought that can create the mosaic of that can represent all the different kind of people in our mosaic in our country, no matter who they are. Because I really take it to heart, United States of America. So my dream is, that is exactly what we'll be working toward, to make sure everybody have the opportunity to pursue, happiness and be a united country. Because I
I've
think it's
really
possible.
enjoyed speaking with you so much. Thank you so much for taking time to visit with me. You are on the run. You are busy all the time. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. I want to say,
No, go ahead.
just thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I thank you too, and I want to. I assume it's okay to ask people to go to joyceelliott.com and learn more about our campaign. I would really appreciate that, because I think the more you learn, the more you will sign up for this campaign.
Spoken like a real teacher. In closing, to our listeners, I want to thank you for spending time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening, and that whatever it is, will help you up your business, your independence, or your life. I'm Kerry McCoy, and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. Until then, be brave and keep it up.
If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the picture of Kerry's face in the center of the screen. To watch the full-length interview, click the video in the top right. For more interview highlights, click the video in the bottom right. Thank you for watching.